She carried the steaming pot of coffee between tables like any ordinary server. But the moment the Admiral walked in, the quiet routine of the base cafe shifted. His eyes followed her every step with a strange intensity. Then he spoke a single phrase that shattered her hidden life. He said her call sign, Fox 9. The pot in her hand trembled, and the Admiral's hands froze in midair as if he were staring at a ghost. What city are you watching from today? If this story resonated with you, hit subscribe for more real stories about extraordinary people. Her name was Tessa Rowan, 24 years old, working the morning shift in a small cafe near Naval Base Trident. She greeted officers who never looked twice at her, wiped tables that never carried her name, and kept her hair tied back so no one would see the unmistakable scar behind her left ear. Most customers saw her as a polite young woman trying to make ends meet. No one imagined she once wore a uniform that carried far more weight than their ribbons and stars. Tessa took the job because she wanted distance from the past. She wanted a life where no one saluted her. A life without pressure. A place where her hands could stop shaking at night. The cafe gave her anonymity, and she embraced it like a cloak. The morning the Admiral arrived began like any other. The sun was bright, the base was busy, and the cafe buzzed with the usual mix of pilots and staff officers. She poured coffee, took orders, and kept her head down. Then the door opened, and Admiral Harrington stepped inside. He was a commanding presence, known across the Pacific Fleet for his stern posture and sharper standards. He walked toward the counter, but his attention was not on the menu. It was on her. Tessa approached him with her standard polite smile. Most officers ignored her existence. Admirals even more so. She expected another routine order, but his eyes held a depth she recognized. He studied her face, her movements, the faint scar she always tried to hide. When she poured his coffee, he spoke in a low voice. "Where did you serve?" Her heart tightened. She kept her expression neutral and answered as she had practiced. "I didn't serve, sir. Just a server here." He frowned. "You carry yourself like someone who has walked flight decks." She carefully corrected him. "I only walked this one." He held her gaze a moment longer, then nodded without arguing. It should have ended there. She should have walked away and breathed normally again. Instead, two young officers at the next table laughed loud enough to draw attention. One of them pointed at her and said, "Admiral, she drops plates almost every day. If she were in uniform, she would lose rank in 10 minutes. The other added, "They hire anyone now." Tessa stiffened. The mockery burned, but she stayed silent. She had learned how to disappear, how to avoid confrontation, how to stay invisible. Admiral Harrington watched her reaction. Something in his eyes shifted. As she turned to refill another pot, he suddenly stood. His voice carried across the cafe. "Fox 9. The room fell silent. Tessa froze mid-step. No one in this cafe should have known that call sign. It belonged to a covert program with files locked behind 2 levels of classified clearance. She breathed carefully, steadying herself, refusing to let the past drag her under. The Admiral stepped closer. His voice held disbelief. "Fox 9, I thought you were gone. They said you were done after the Raven Harbor incident." The young officers blinked, confused. The entire cafe stared. Tessa felt exposed, vulnerable, but she lifted her chin. She no longer had the luxury of hiding. She set the coffee pot down and faced him. Her voice was steady. "I retire without ceremony. That is all." The Admiral shook his head. "You saved my team. You were the youngest analyst ever cleared for the 9-line protocols. You broke the encryption that kept 37 sailors alive. And you vanished without recognition." Tessa replied softly, "I asked to be removed. My mind needed room to breathe." The young officers looked shaken now. One whispered, "Sir, she was Special Operations Intelligence, wasn't she?" The Admiral did not answer them. His attention remained on her. "You serve with honor. You deserve respect, not mockery." But the revelation was not what shook the room. It was what the Admiral did next. He straightened his uniform, placed his cup down, and bowed his head to her. A silent acknowledgement of service. A gesture almost never seen from someone of his rank. Whispers erupted across the cafe. Officers who once ignored her now looked stunned, unsure whether to salute or apologize. Tessa stood firm. She had been called many things in her career, but Fox 9 carried the weight of lives saved, nights spent decoding threats, and memories she tried desperately to keep buried. Her secret was no longer hers alone. Yet something inside her felt lighter. The Admiral finally spoke with the tone of someone who understood more than he said. You deserve time to heal. You still do. But never believe you faded into nothing. Not after what you carried. Tessa felt a warmth she had not allowed herself in years. She had not wanted the recognition. But hearing those words from someone who had seen the darkest corners of operations gave her strength. She returned to work, not as a ghost hiding from her past, but as a person reclaiming her peace. The officers who mocked her apologized quietly before leaving. She accepted their apology without bitterness. She knew their ignorance no longer touched her identity. Her life moved forward not because she escaped her past, but because she finally acknowledged what it cost her and what it gave her. Service had shaped her, but healing defined her. Even heroes needed quiet places where no one demanded anything from them. Her name might never appear in textbooks or ceremonies, but she carried something far greater. She carried the truth of who she was, with or without a uniform, and that truth was enough. What did this story make you feel? Where are you watching from? Subscribe to Soul Relief Stories for more real stories that heal the heart.